Yellowjacket, Inactive. Real name, Dr. Henry Hank Pym. Occupation, former adventurer, biochemist. Identity, publicly known. Legal status, American citizen who received a conviction for treason that was later overturned. Former aliases, Ant-Man 1, Giant Man 1, Goliath 1. Place of birth, Elmsford, New York. Known relatives, Maria, first wife, deceased, Janet Van Dyne, ex-wife. Group affiliation, former member of the Avengers and the Defenders. First appearance, as Pym, Tales to Astonish number 27. As Ant-Man, Tales to Astonish number 35. As Giant Man, Tales to Astonish number 49. As Goliath, Avengers number 28. As Yellowjacket, Avengers number 59. Final appearance, as Adventurer, as Yellowjacket, Avengers number 217. Permanently retires as Adventurer, Avengers number 230. History. Dr. Henry Pym, a biochemist with extensive knowledge in other scientific fields, discovered a rare group of subatomic particles which have become known as the Pym particles. Pym was able, through the application of magnetic fields, to entrap the particles within two separate serums. One serum would reduce the size of persons and objects, and the other would restore them to their normal size. Pym tested the reducing serum on himself and discovered it was more powerful than he had expected. It reduced him to the size of an insect. Pym became entrapped in an anthill and was pursued by the ants within. He escaped and restored himself to his normal size with his other serum. Deciding that the serums were too dangerous to exist, Pym destroyed both of them. However, weeks later he reconsidered his decision and began to recreate the serums, whose existence he then kept secret. Inspired by his experience in the anthill, Pym undertook a study of ants and theorized that ants communicate through psionic electrical waves transmitted through their antennae. After months of work, Pym succeeded in creating his first cybernetic helmet, which would enable him to communicate with ants through transmitting and receiving psionic electrical waves. Thinking that someday he might want to use the shrinking potion on himself again, Pym also designed a protective costume for himself. That same day, however, Pym received an assignment from the government to concoct a gas that would provide people with temporary limited immunity to radioactivity under certain specific circumstances, based on his previous work. The government also assigned 4 other scientists to assist him in the project. The KGB, the Soviet intelligence agency, learned of Pym's project and sent agents who held Pym and his assistants prisoner in their own laboratory. Only Pym knew the entire formula for the gas they had by now developed, and he refused to tell the Soviet agents. The agents set about searching the laboratory for the formula, intending to kill Pym and his assistants afterwards. Unseen, Pym donned the cybernetic helmet and protective costume and, using his reducing formula, shrank himself to the size of an ant. He escaped to an anthill outside, put a large number of ants under his control through the helmet, and used them to attack the agents and free his men, who then overpowered their assailants. Pym then restored himself to normal size. Afterwards, in the guise of the Ant-Man, Pym battled various menaces, including the criminal scientist Elias Egghead Starr. See, Egghead, who was to become Pym's greatest enemy. After an alien being from the planet Cosmos, see, alien races, Cosmosians, killed the scientist Vernon Van Dyne, Pym revealed his secret identity of Ant-Man to Van Dyne's daughter Janet, who wished to avenge her father's death. Pym taught Janet how to use the gas within which he now contained the Pym particles and which he used to shrink himself in size, and through bioengineering he gave her the ability to grow insect-like wings when she used the gas to shrink herself to insect size. As the Wasp, see, Wasp, Janet Van Dyne assisted Ant-Man in finding and defeating the murderous Cosmosian. Pym and Van Dyne gradually fell in love. Van Dyne reminded Pym of his deceased first wife, Maria. Pym and Van Dyne became crime-fighting partners in their costumed identities and were two of the founding members of the Avengers. Pym next developed a series of capsules containing the Pym particles which he and Van Dyne used to grow or shrink to various heights. He also developed capsules that enabled him to grow to greater than normal heights. Thereafter, Pym preferred to use his power to grow to giant size for crime fighting and called himself Giant Man. At first, he found that he could not support his own weight if he grew to a height above 12 feet. Later, he was able to reach far greater heights, even 100 feet, and still move about comfortably, but he became weaker in proportion to the amount he grew beyond 12 feet. However, his size changing imposed great strains on Pym's body that he believed could prove fatal, and upon deciding that their careers as Giant Man and the Wasp were proving too great a danger for Van Dyne, Pym decided to retire as a costumed crime fighter. Acceding to his wishes, Van Dyne retired as a crime fighter too. Sometime later, however, Pym and Van Dyne learned that the Submariner was heading for New York City. Fearing trouble, they decided to alert the Avengers. Van Dyne, as the Wasp, was captured by first the undersea barbarian leader Attuma and then by the Collector.
See, Attuma, Collector.
In order to help the Avengers rescue Van Dyne, Pym decided to use his growing power again. He donned a new costume and adopted the new name of Goliath. By this time, both Pym and Van Dyne could change size simply by willing themselves to do so, due to their exposure to Pym particles over the years. However, Pym could only achieve one height other than his own, that of 25 feet, and could only do so for exactly 15 minutes. In the course of the Avengers' battle against the Collector, Goliath overstayed this time limit and, on trying to regain his normal size, could not shrink beneath 10 feet. Eventually, Pym regained his ability to shrink to insect size, but lost his ability to grow to 10 feet in height. The Collector later subjected Pym to treatments that enabled him to grow to 25 feet in height for up to 15 minutes. Around this time, Pym experimented with robotics and created a robot with the potential for high intelligence. The robot turned against its creator and escaped from Pym's laboratory. It later became one of the Avengers' greatest adversaries under the name of Ultron.
See, Ultron.
For several years, Pym had been in love with Janet Van Dyne, but because of his repressed personality, resisted marrying her. One day, while working in his laboratory, Pym accidentally dropped and smashed some vials containing various unknown gases. The released gases wreaked a radical temporary personality change in Pym. He took the new identity of Yellowjacket, claimed that he had murdered Henry Pym, kidnapped Van Dyne, and proposed marriage to her, as Pym had long wanted to do. Realizing that Yellowjacket was really Pym, Van Dyne decided to play along, fearing that she would worsen his psychological condition if she did otherwise. Van Dyne and Pym, as Yellowjacket, were married at Avengers Mansion, but immediately afterwards the Avengers were attacked by the Ringmaster and his Circus of Crime.
See, Circus of Crime, Ringmaster.
The shock of seeing Van Dyne in danger of death shocked Pym back into his normal personality. The Avengers defeated the Ringmaster and company. Despite the fact that Pym was married under an assumed name, the marriage between Pym and Van Dyne was still legal, and Pym and Van Dyne happily agreed to let it stand. Pym eventually renounced his power to become a giant due to its continuing physical strains, and used the name and costume of Yellowjacket in crime fighting. Pym spent periods of time with the Avengers, and even once with the Defenders, as Yellowjacket, but he spent most of his time completely devoted to his scientific research. He gave his blessing to Scott Lang when Lang used his old equipment to become the second Ant-Man.
See, Ant-Man.
Scientific research had always been Pym's preferred career, and he no longer found the excitement in crime fighting that he had earlier in his career. Pym began to have periods of tension and depression. He began to feel that he had never made a scientific discovery equal to his discovery of the Pym particles in the several years following that event. Moreover, he was plagued by guilt over creating Ultron. As a result, he was overcome with a sense that he was a failure as a scientist, judged by his own impossibly high standards. This sense of failure was exacerbated when he considered his wife's success as a fashion designer and realized that, as a millionaire, she was the principal source of money in their marriage. Pym began to take out his frustrations through verbally abusing his wife. Matters came to a head when the Avengers battled the so-called Elf Queen. Suspecting that the Elf Queen was not acting from evil motives, Captain America attempted to calm her down. Yellowjacket, however, who was edgy because of his personal matters, blasted Elf Queen from behind without stopping to consider what Captain America was trying to do. As a result, Elf Queen resumed fighting. Afterwards, Captain America felt forced to bring charges against Yellowjacket of acting recklessly, since innocent people could have been killed in the battle that Yellowjacket's action had started again. An Avengers court-martial meeting was set to examine the charges. Now beginning to undergo a nervous breakdown, Pym built a robot to attack the Avengers during the court-martial. Pym designed the robot to have a secret weak point which he would use to defeat it. Pym fantasized that his defeat of the robot would make him a hero in the Avengers' eyes and lead to the dismissal of the charges. When his wife protested his plan, he brutally struck her. But Pym's plan went awry, and it was the Wasp who ended up defeating the robot. Pym was expelled from the Avengers. Moreover, his wife Janet initiated proceedings that ended in their divorce. Pym moved out of his wife's mansion. Astonishingly, Pym was now virtually penniless, since his books were out of print, and he had somehow exhausted the money he had earned from his patents. Pym lived his life aimlessly until he was approached by his old enemy, Egghead. Egghead claimed that he felt guilty over causing his niece, Patricia Starr, to lose her arm, and asked Pym to give her a bionic arm he had designed and attach it to her in exchange for a large sum of money. Needing the money, Pym fulfilled his assignment, but found that the bionic arm placed Trish Starr under Egghead's control. Egghead informed Pym that the bionic arm was booby-trapped and that he could detonate it, killing Trish unless Pym obeyed Egghead's orders. As a result, Pym was forced to help steal adamantium from the government and to fight the Avengers, who defeated him. However, Egghead had lied. The arm was not booby-trapped. Moreover, Trish Starr had been programmed by her uncle to claim that it was Pym's plot, not Egghead's. Hence, Pym had no evidence that he had stolen the adamantium under duress, and so he was imprisoned on charges of treason. During Pym's trial, he was captured by the third group calling itself the Masters of Evil, who claimed to be rescuing him. Actually, they worked for Egghead, who, having successfully framed Pym, now asked him to join their criminal organization. Pym pretended to agree, and Egghead set him to work on developing a machine intended to lengthen the human lifespan. Soon afterwards, Pym announced it was finished. Suspecting a trick, Egghead and his allies had Pym hooked up to the machine, just as Pym had secretly intended. Pym had actually constructed various means of defeating his enemies into the machine, and now turned it against Egghead and the Masters of Evil, and single-handedly defeated them. Meanwhile, the Avengers had found Egghead's hideout. The Avenger Hawkeye sneaked into the hideout and saw Egghead aiming a gun at the unsuspecting Pym. Hawkeye fired an arrow into the gun barrel. The gun proved to be an energy blaster and backfired, killing Egghead. Some of the Masters of Evil testified in Pym's trial as to how Egghead had framed him, and Pym was found not guilty. Upon his release, Pym decided to give up being a costumed adventurer and returned permanently to a life of scientific research. Height, 6 feet. Weight, 185 pounds. Eyes, blue. Hair, blonde. Powers. As Ant-Man, Henry Pym had the same powers as the current Ant-Man.
See Ant-Man powers.
Basically, he could shrink to insect size while retaining his full normal strength. In addition, as Giant Man and as Goliath, Pym could grow to gigantic height in the same way that his successor as Giant Man did.
See Giant Man.
Originally, Pym needed to expose himself to Pym particles through serums, gases, or capsules in order to effect his size changes. Later, he could trigger his size changes simply through mental concentration due to his many past exposures to the Pym particles. As Yellowjacket, Pym could shrink to insect size through mental concentration. Paraphernalia. As Ant-Man, Pym wore a cybernetic helmet enabling him to communicate with ants and other higher insects and to control their minds.
See Ant-Man, Ant-Man's helmet.
As Yellowjacket, Pym carried miniaturized versions of the helmet's devices in his cowl, enabling him to perform the same feats. As Yellowjacket, Pym carried electric stingers in his gloves which emitted electrical bolts of variable current. He also had artificial wings which appeared when he shrank.
See Wasp.